Push one in the chat if you can hear me. All right, got a confirmation. Thank you for the confirmation. Welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is a response to a stream that I was just on with Dr. Thunder and Ike Ogerman on Case Closed. And I wanted to follow this up because I think that it's really important discussion. I think they're having a great discussion over there. I was just on the panel. I just wanted to make sure I followed up on some of the talking points that were being made. I'm going to drop the link in the chat. Just give me a second. All right, there's a link in the chat. Make sure you update your Zoom client before joining. Hey, peace to everyone that showed up. Just want to make sure I get everything squared together real quick. Really interesting discussion. I think that when we talk about Black men in politics, we have to take into consideration that this generation of Black men don't believe that the system is viable for them. And so when you have a discussion about undocumented people coming through the border, and your first response is, you know, we need to get rid of these people, but you don't trust the system. Well, the system is how you deal with those people. So if you don't trust the system, but you want to get rid of these people, how exactly does that work? And so what I'm seeing here is that there is a disjointed understanding of the system and how it works at the state, at the local, state, and federal levels. And I also think that there is a political literacy issue that is overarching on a lot of Black men in this space, and especially across the country. So let me bring up some of the articles that we've covered in the past that I think would help some people understand some of the talking points that I was making on the panel. Just give me a second. Let me explain. Let me expand this out. Share my screen real quick. All right, this is from CBS News. Let me know if you can see the screen in the chat. Can't see the screen? Okay, what's going on here? Okay. This is from CBS News. This is just one piece I'm gonna bring up. I'm gonna bring up a couple of pieces here. Organization aims to register 1 million Black men to vote by 2024 election. Black women are often considered a critical voting bloc, but a new initiative aims to dramatically expand the number of African American male voters ahead of the next presidential election. Black Men Vote announced a new national campaign Friday to register 1 million Black male voters by November 2024. The organization says the Strength in Numbers initiative will be its most ambitious effort in that it will partner with local community leaders and national organizations such as Rock the Vote and Microsoft. The group unveiled the initiative at a summit featuring Democratic Rep. Benny Thompson and former Maryland Lieutenant Governor and Republican National Committee Chairman Michael Steele during the Congressional Black Caucus annual legislative conference. Quote, registering 1 million Black men to vote has the potential to change the electoral landscape locally, on a state level, and nationally, said Black Men Vote board member Joe Paul. It's time for Black men to step up and take our rightful place in helping to shape the future of our nation, and the Strength in Numbers initiative is a critical first step. The group is targeting Black men between the ages of 18 to 35, and builds on previous outreach. In 2020, Black Men Vote ran a multi-state digital campaign emphasizing the importance of voting. The group used influencers such as rapper T.I., actor Marcus Scribner, and activist Thelonious Floyd, brother of George Floyd. Bringing up Joe in. It also has been engaged with the National Basketball Social Justice Coalition and ran a series of public service announcements featuring several NBA players. The solution to challenges faced in every community begins with access to the right to vote, said James Cardigan, executive director of the NBA Social Justice Coalition. Using our collective voice in our democratic process is essential to achieving lasting change, particularly for those who have been historically left out and left behind. According to Black Men Vote, African American voters made up approximately 12.5% of the U.S. electorate with a record 30 million eligible to vote in 2020. But Black men have largely lagged Black women in voting. In 2016, 64% of eligible Black women said they voted, compared to 54% of eligible Black men. Quote, as we help give Black men the tools necessary to participate in the electoral system, our families and communities will benefit. Now, I was just on Ike Ugerman's and Dr. Thunder's panel, and this point was argued that essentially it's not an issue of literacy, that it's an issue of just not participating. But in order for you to understand the issues of the day, you have to have some literacy going into this. And if we're using the manosphere as a small sample, political sample, we know that a lot of guys in here don't know what ward they're voting in, what's on the ballot, who's on the ballot, and what a midterm is, for example. They have no idea. And so I'm not saying something that's out of, left field, or I'm not being quote unquote condescending. Black men are lagging Black women when it comes to the political process. There's a varying amount of issues as to why this is the case, but illiteracy is one of these issues. Okay, not knowing whether or not you can send your voting by mail is one of those issues. Thinking that you have to stand in line is one of those issues. Okay, not knowing the difference, not understanding that you live in a Democratic-run district, but you want to vote Republican. Who's going to be the Republican on the ticket? Do you even know? These are very basic and fundamental questions in order to engage the political process, but a lot of Black men in this space, as a sample, don't even know. How many black men have we heard only talk about Trump, but don't talk about Tim Scott? Don't talk about Michael Steele. Don't talk about John James out in Michigan. Don't talk about Daniel Cameron out in Kentucky. But consider themselves to be conservative, but have a distrust in the system, but always seem to only gravitate towards other white male conservatives. This is an issue of literacy, not knowing who's on the ballot, not knowing who's even in your district, not knowing what's on the ballot. That's a huge problem. What's going on, Nagon? What's going on, Renaissance man?
Hey, how you doing, Mike? Yeah, I'm doing real well. I know you were kind of breaking some stuff down that was kind of key, and that's right on the money. One of the big things, people talk about givers tangibles and everything else like that. People think you're going to be given something. Mm-hmm. Political organization is how you got anything in this country. We dealt with that locally. We dealt with that nationally, and we also dealt with that internationally. And the international aspect of really of us working synergistically with others internationally has been huge as well, and that has been deeply underplayed, certainly here in the history of our country, and certainly in the Black community especially. But if we're going to talk about directly here, and we're going to talk about domestically, we are going to have to be well politically organized. Well, Black women get things. I heard this Thunder guy talking about, well, Black women are, they're getting things. They're getting things. Well, Black women get certain things that you should have as well, but Black women participate heavily in the process. They do. Black men, we don't participate at the levels that we should, and we're not as politically organized as we need to be at the ground level. When I sit there and I have the Black Women's Political Caucus here in my town, and I can look at them consistently sitting down, or the 100 Black women and all this kind of stuff, and they're organizing consistently. They're out there politically consistently organizing, and our Black male groups are not as active. There's somewhat of an issue there. White people, when you look at them and they have their white women's groups and they have their men's groups, they participate pretty equally. All right, they do. Okay, Latino groups pretty much play very much the same way. We have to play that game politically in a sophisticated manner that way as well. And it's not difficult for us to do that because we're very good at being politically organized. But recently we have fallen back and have played a game that has been laid out a lot by these, I would say, conservatives, where you're not getting involved, where you're not being involved locally, politically, and things, of course, are going to kind of slide by you. You're going to be angry and you're going to ask to have things done, but things are not going to happen if you're not on the ground putting people in voting booths and really pushing your agenda forward that way politically. It's a numbers game. You have to understand that. And if you're not playing by those rules, you're not going to be involved. Say, well, the system's not working for me. The system will work for you, certainly, if you get out here and vote. That's why a lot of people fear you and they're trying to stop you from voting, because that's precisely what they want you to do, is not to vote and not to get involved, because then they're able to totally X you out of the system. So you have to understand how this process really does work. And that's something that too many of us are just not talking about here. And we need to be better politically educated.
Absolutely. Renaissance, you have anything you want to add to this?
Hey, what's up, Mike? What's up, Nagon?
Hey.
The one thing I would add is I think there also has to be an emphasis on education as well, voter education. Because also when you listen to people talk across the board, the average American does not know how the government works. But since we're focusing in on Black men here, you hear a lot of the misinformation that's talked about, whether it be people not understanding that you can't you cannot pass a piece of legislation like for one group. Like you can't just pass a piece of legislation that's just for Black men, or people talk about, oh, the Asians got a hate crime bill, not understanding that that law basically adds additional funding, and works under the federal hate crimes act that's already in place. So I just think that when you listen to a lot of things that these people are, all the conversations that people are having, you have to get people not only just registered to vote, but they have to understand and they have to know where their interests are. Because a lot of times you'll hear people say, "Oh, well, we voted and nothing happened." I'm like, yeah, you're not going to have something happen just by you going and voting. You're going to have to figure out what your issues are, actually organize around those things as well. And to be honest with you, at times you're not going to necessarily get everything you want just because of the fact of living in democracy, coupled with just the numerical breakout of things. But there are tons of things that you can gain and at state levels that are huge and in some instances maybe affect your life even more than federally, not on all issues, but on some issues. But then even locally, just what you're able to who you're able to get into office, on your city council, on your school board. That's going to be a growing issue. Roland Martin actually had a video where he talked about the fact that these groups like Moms for Liberty are coming into these places, in places like black districts. They had one in South Carolina that was majority Black. This woman ran for school board. In some instances, didn't even have a kid in the school, and fired a bunch of Black legislators, well accomplished. I'm sorry, not Black legislators, Black teachers and administrators, well accomplished ones that had awards. And in one instance, the person who won who won the school board seat didn't even have a college degree. So there's things that people must understand at all levels that are on the table. So registering people is great, but people have to be educated on how the process works, because just hearing the rhetoric out there, a lot aren't, unfortunately.
Indeed. I want to make sure I also cover that point that you just made, because we were talking about that on the panel, about this Asian hate crime bill. I want to make sure I add this. Just give me a second. Actually, let me.
And Mike, I have a quick question for you.
Yeah, let me do it this way. Yeah, go ahead.
The Asian hate crime bill. How many of these people who are complaining and saying they did a bill for Asians, how many people you think, garbling all over the place, how many people you think really ever peered to take a look into what this bill actually says?
That's a good question. I don't necessarily know, but what we're going to do is we're going to break that down, though, because I'm glad that Renaissance Man reminded me about this. So I want to make sure I bring this up. Let me share my screen.
It's definitely a minority of people. And the ironic thing is, it's one of the shorter bills that you're going to find in Congress, coming through Congress. The one that raised the debt, that one was about 100 pages. Congress basically had less than a week to go and vote on it. This one I believe was 5 or 6 pages, so doesn't get much shorter than this.
Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yep.
See your screen, yes.
In the chat room, just push 1 if you can see the screen. All right. This is from Congress.gov. House Resolution 151 condemning all forms of anti-Asian sentiment as related to COVID-19. Okay, we just got finished discussing this on Dr. Thunder's panel. Shown here, introduced in the House 223-2021. Okay, this is a list of representatives who were a part of the bill. condemning all forms of anti-Asian sentiment as related to COVID-19. Whereas 23 million Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders account for 7% of the population in the United States, whereas over 2 million Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders are working on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic in healthcare, law enforcement, first responders, transportation, supermarkets, and other service industries. Whereas the use of anti-Asian terminology and rhetoric related to COVID-19, such as the Chinese virus, Wuhan virus, and Kung flu, have perpetuated anti-Asian stigma, whereas the use of anti-Asian rhetoric has resulted in Asian Americans being harassed, assaulted, and scapegoated for the COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, this goes on and on. That's what that bill was, okay? In regards to COVID-19, okay? COVID-19 officially ended by the WHO May 11th of 2023. That being said, you always hear uninformed people saying the Asians got a hate crime bill. The Asians got a hate crime bill, right? This is what they got. Okay. So from now on going forward, no one should ever say the Asians got a hate crime bill. That's not what happened. This is what they got. Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna quickly add that what this does, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, we scroll down. At this point, these provisions may have even expired. Like, because I believe there's some additional money that was given out, but I believe it's only for like a couple years. Like, it was not a long period of time. It was like $1 million. And what it did is it gave money to a certain division of the Department of Justice, because that's who goes and pursues any sort of hate crime laws. What?
Office of Civil Rights.
Office of Civil Rights. I believe that's still under the Justice Department, correct?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Because that ties back to 1968, which is where you see the first federal crimes law passed by Johnson, and I believe that creates the whole Civil Rights Division under the Department of Justice and the prosecutions. And that's what I don't think people really understand, is that that this is basically like I said, it's basically supplement to this bill. But like I said, it's temporary. It was not anything long term. Like I said, a lot of people who actually read it kind of were like, wow, this is what people were upset about. There's almost like an element, like you said, of virtue signaling in the sense of, it's some condemnations and things like that. And, gives out a little bit of money, but it's like I said, it's way overhyped, and it shows people just aren't really in tune to understanding what's going on as to how this really works.
It's a part of that literacy piece that I was saying, that most people will just hear Asian hate crime bill and they say, see, they did it for them, but they didn't actually read the bill themselves, right? That's a part of the literacy piece into the voter education piece that you spoke to earlier. This is a part of the problem with Black men. They're taking talking points from nefarious sources, regurgitating it, and then getting frustrated when someone such as you, Nagone, myself, MOT, say, actually, no, this is not what you think it is. No, you think you know more than us. You're condescending. You're talking down to us. You don't know how to talk to us. Actually, we do know how to talk to you. And here's the source, and let's read it together. But what's happening here is that Black men are latching on to information that does not corroborate their statements. Okay, this is straight from Congress. This isn't like, World Star Hip Hop or Phil the Advice Show or Philip Scott Audio Experience. It nothing to do with that. Okay, the problem here is a lot of Black men are not reading. A lot of Black men have no idea what's on the ballot. A lot of Black men have no idea who's on the ballot. They don't even know where their voting district is. They don't even know what gerrymandering is. I heard somebody call, gerrymandering like it's a first name and last name. Gerrymandering. No, that's not what it is. Okay. This is a huge problem. This is a huge problem. And so, yeah, you start feeling left out primarily because you didn't do your homework. Civic participation, civic engagement, voter education. These are things that you probably should have known before engaging in discussion, but you decide to go in there anyways. This is a huge problem. If I'm a political candidate running for office, I may not want to talk to you because, you're throwing all these things at me. Asians got a hate crime bill. We'll cut the check. What about reparations? If I don't get reparations, then, I'm not voting for you. But how can you get reparations from him if he's not, officially elected into office? It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. That's the literacy piece that is hurting a lot of Black men at the end of the day.
And they get offended and they start snickering or laughing based on their ignorance, and they're not involved. Most of these guys that you're talking to here, and I'm going to have to say it in the space, I have to condemn the space a lot. Most of the people you talk to are not politically involved. Most of them are not even registered. Most of them not registered at all. And that's a big problem with our literacy. I was looking at where the NBA, here's some of the wealthiest Black men that you might have who have jobs in the United States currently, not business owners, but they have jobs per se. Some of your wealthiest workers here in this country, 20% of the NBA is registered to vote. So when I look at that and I look at the overall, we are dealing with a tremendous amount of inactivity. I'm sorry, I just had somebody disturbing me on the call. The large number of us are not registered or are not registered to vote. We're not participating in this system at all. And so when you have a poll like I saw on that last live stream that you were on, the people think that democracy or whatever voting is not working for them. Is the system not working for them? 72% said no, it's not working for us. That's about the same amount of number of people who actually are unregistered, are not voting, or not participating in the system. So that would be about right. Most people don't think that most Black men don't think that is because many of us are not registered to vote or involved or engaged in this system. And I'm talking about at the local levels, particularly where things affect us the most in so many ways. We are not involved and we complain. We have to turn the corner on this. Mm-hmm. We must turn the corner on that. Very important. I'm deeply politically involved locally in my area, and we see some brothers involved. We need to get a lot more. We're pulling a lot more in, but it bothers me nationally that we are at this rather low level that we should be much more engaged in because the stakes are high, and you have people out there who are against you who don't want to see you get anything. And we can get into the economics of how a lot of this works in business and so forth. I'm a little bit later on down the line here, but this is a factor, and we can't ignore it. The economic literacy is a big problem. We can't ignore this. We can't play it off anymore. We can't do that.
Yeah, that's
I just think that go ahead, Renaissance.
No, I was just going to say the fact that only 20% of the NBA is registered to vote, and then who knows what the actual percentage who actually go and vote consistently is, but I'm sure it's lower. And if the NBA is that, I'm sure like the NFL is lower because the NBA is a way more progressive league as far as what it does for like social justice, activism, all of these other things. How it's involved on the continent with NBA Africa. So if you have an institution which has what is like 70-80% Black, essentially everyone who is a participant in that league is essentially making close to $500,000, if not $1 million a year, and you're only seeing 20% participation. That's problematic. It's very problematic.
It's a sin.
Yeah.
It's sinful. It's sinful. It's crazy. But that's what we are. We've got to address stuff like this. Shaq Daddy, just the first time he voted was the last election. Shaq Daddy. This, Shazam himself. Think about that.
Shaquille O'Neal.
But then
Shaquille O'Neal, Shaq Daddy. Shaq.
But then the crazy thing about that stat too is, like I said, I'm sure it's equal or lower if you look at things like I said, NFL, or even Hollywood. But then you have guys who want to celebrate when someone like Ice Cube says he's going to get involved in politics and, basically negotiate the contract with Black America. I'm just like, these people are not politically savvy, and, you all are basically running off of these people's individual accomplishments or their names, not necessarily the expertise or their competency, thinking that you want this person to go and, try to do something politically. And it makes no sense, because there are plenty of people you could sit down and advise with and work with and actually, or just send to go and do this work, who have legislation on the table that people just want to completely ignore. And we see a celebrity go do something and people want to think, oh, that's the way to go.
Yeah. Because the idea here is, in this context, is to deflect and point at people coming across the border. Oh, we have a porous border. We have to do something about the border. Well, wait a second here. Wait a second here. You mean to tell me that you weren't engaged in politics before, but now you're engaged because you see photos and videos of people on social media, at the border seeking asylum? That's your political, enlightenment? That doesn't make any sense. Okay, so where were you before that?
It's, there's really not much of a excuse for it. And that's something that I think, especially here in this manosphere, we need to, speak more on, because, you do have a lot of, you do have a certain number of Black men that come here, and, and people can talk all different types of views. They can have all different types of views here. That's not a problem. You can call yourself whatever, conservative or liberal, or call yourself a libertarian or whatever. But if you're involved in the process, things, will certainly, you can shore some things up and look at things a little differently from that level. And you just don't see it. You have guys in here, like I see, oh wow, yeah, I see the Hood Conservative in there. He's got the Laugh Olympics going. He's not registered. He didn't vote. So you have guys like this who are running around talking, but are not involved, but yet will say that they're this and they're that. And it's ridiculous. It's actually ridiculous. And I would like to see, some folks who would like to defend this if they can, defend that position. I'd like to see people try to defend that. And I'd be very open to having that conversation, but I don't see how that benefits us at any level whatsoever. Any level. I don't care what your political, party or inclination is, as one may call it. How does that benefit us by not being involved? That's my question.
Well, here the other thing too I'd add.
But the distrust in this. Oh, go ahead, Renaissance.
No, I was just gonna say the other thing I quickly add too is kind of pointing to this the title of this article is that you'll hear a lot of Black men talk about conservative politics and they're conservative and things along those lines. But I'm like, okay, like when do you ever hear conservatives telling their people not to vote? Like I just find it interesting that people either have voter apathy or they think they're going to gain some sort of power by not participating. But then, these guys who will talk about, conservative politics and how that will fix the Black community is like, okay, if that's what you're taking, like those people believe in political participation. They voted for 50 years just to get rid of Roe v. Wade. And here these people come claim they're conservative, but they want reparations or they're not going to vote, and then they're not even looking at which party is even what their stance is on the position. So it's just a lot of things that don't make sense.
Yeah, and so undocumented people seeking asylum, reparations become the hallmark of Black male politics in this space, not in the country, but in this space. But this space is actually reflective of a lot of communities across the country where you hear Black men talk about these issues, whether it's in the barbershop or some other venue. They're really just issues that are not necessarily in control of the local politic at all. What I have found, if we just take, people who got to Chicago, these asylum seekers, well, how did they get here? Well, they got here because Governor Abbott sent them up here by bus, and they paid for it with your tax dollars. Okay, that should have been money, because if they considered these people to be illegal, why did they send them to Chicago? Why didn't they send them right back to the border, to CBP, Customs Border Protection? Why didn't they do that? No, I didn't do that. They wanted these people here. Okay, they knew full and well that these people were seeking asylum, and they sent them up there. So they're not illegal. They're here under, proper legal ramifications. And so I think when Black men take these positions and say, well, what about this? Well, guess what? All of these issues that Black men in this space have talked about, Black women aborting babies, and I can't believe they've been aborting the babies, and this, and this. Well, abortion was on the ballot. How did women vote? Did you know? Do you know? You want to hold Black women accountable, but at the end of the day, when that issue was put on the ballot, we saw how women voted. Okay? But if you're not politically engaged, then you don't really know how this is actually working. Same thing with George Floyd Justice and the Policing Act, something that would have greatly protected a lot of Black men who were being stopped by law enforcement. Who voted against that? And so what we're seeing here is on the screen from Rolling Stones, why are more Black men voting Republican? They vote against their best interests. Okay? They vote against their best interest, and then they come over here into this space and say, well, this is why I don't trust Democrats. Well, wait a second here. Republicans are the ones who voted against George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. Republicans are the ones who voted against the domestic terrorism bill sponsored by Jamal Bowman. Republicans are the ones who voted against the Affordable Care Act, AKA Obamacare. Republicans are the ones, holding the country hostage with this debt ceiling issue at the time, before it got settled out. And so what are we talking about here? You just don't understand the issues of the day, and that's fine. But don't pretend that you do know when you don't know.
Yeah, no.
And so, yeah, go ahead.
Are you going to read this article or?
No, I thought I know you had posted one before. I can't find it. About Black men voting. I think it's from Pew Research.
Yeah. I'll do some digging. No, I was just going to quickly add to, the subtitle here is very interesting. The percentage of Black men voting Democrat has slipped in every national election since 2012, even as the opposition party embraces the racism of Donald Trump. That's the funny thing is that you got outright, not even covert, not the sort of hypocritical behind your back type of racism. You've got outright blatant racism being embraced by the opposite party. And you have Black men showing up there like, where do I sign up? And it doesn't really make sense. And part of it, honestly, I think some of these guys on the delusion that oh, well, these guys just have sort of an issue with, the quote unquote Pookie and Ray Ray element of the Black community. And, and the way they view it, oh, I take offense to these people as well. Well, that's not necessarily the case. Like, yeah, they have some opposition there, but they have a problem with upward mobility amongst Black men as well. So, look at how it's like someone like Barack Obama was treated by the right. The guy says, hey, that the Cambridge police acted stupidly for arresting Henry Louis Gates. And, all of a sudden he's a racist. He hates white people. He hates the police, all these things, the guy wears a tan suit to one day when he's in the White House. People act like he's done something like indecent, like or something that's like indecent exposure. People have to go back and point out, Reagan wearing a tan suit, and Bush 1 wearing a tan suit, Bush 2 is, you can see how this person was treated by the right, and that's why I don't think guys really get that. Hey, their issue is it's outright racism in general. Like you being or going over there and thinking, well, hey, I'm not like them. I'm the well behaved, clean cut, a Black guy is trying to do something positive. Like that's irrelevant. Like Michael Steele did that, and look where it landed him. Like they barely even acknowledged this guy, even though he was the chairman of their party and really helped them really gain a foothold with the Tea Party and
capitalize on it.
Yeah, and get a gain a foothold during 2010 in the midterms, help them take back the House, as well as I believe they took back the Senate 2 years later in 2012. So I mean that's sort of the record of the party where it goes, and a lot of people just want to. A lot of Black men for some reason want to ignore that.
I mean, personally, I just don't think that the numbers over there even count because they're not pushing policy measures when they're actually going over there. So their numbers don't count anyway. I just say this, it's easy to handle. Ask them about political history. Ask them to recite political history. If they're not reciting political history, just humiliate and embarrass the hell out of them and move along. Because these people are not doing this stuff in the rural South. They're only doing this stuff in areas where they can afford to do that stuff. Like, you only throw your votes away in areas where you can afford to throw it away. You don't move to areas in society that don't work and then vote for the actual people who don't care about you. You can only do this stuff as a paid prop or in highly liberal areas where they don't need your actual vote anyway. So I think this is like a non-story, but you need to keep inviting these people on and showing them just how stupid and ignorant that they are, and showing that the only reason why they're doing this is for actual attention. There are no policy measures in place. You just excommunicate them from society like we used to do, always do. Like we haven't done the excommunicating from society that they actually did in the 70s, that they actually did in the 80s. There was no universal rebuke of these actual people as persons, and that's what needs to come back, because none of these people are actually pushing any policy proposals. Zero of them are. Every time there's a policy proposal, they don't even push it. They don't even acknowledge it. They just vote against it. So I just say it's a good idea, but they're throwing the numbers away anyway. You're not getting anything while you're over there. It's just a redo of the hip hop Republicans. That's all that is.
Let me read this article. This is from the Rolling Stone. Why are more Black men voting Republican? Okay. I should read the subtitle. The percentage of Black men voting Democrat has slipped in every MOT. Slipped in every national election since 2012, even as the opposition party embraces the racism of Donald Trump. Black men needed to be buffoons, think Herschel Walker, in exchange for being treated like the king of the moment and a figurehead greeted by Republican cheers. If interested, please call the GOP. Perhaps it is too easy to reduce the small but increasing rush of Black male Republicans to an imaginary advertisement for Black buffoonery. Yet, such a thought is irresistible for some, considering that a man like Walker is actually the GOP nominee in Tuesday's tight U.S. Senate runoff race in Georgia. Certainly, that idea has been adopted by many relatives of Kevin Fulton, a litigator in Houston. Fulton is no buffoon. He's an accomplished professional who carries the lessons from his toughest courtroom cases to holiday family gatherings in his native South Central Los Angeles. But there, the question, why are you a Republican, absorbs the atmosphere. The verbal lashings are even worse from Black strangers when he's canvassing for Republican candidates in Houston's Black neighborhoods or distributing literature at the polls. Quote, Uncle Tom, sellout, Clarence Thomas. Fulton chuckles. I've been called it all. He's never been called Malcolm X, but in between slicing the turkey and stuffing on his plate into manageable bites at the holiday dinners, he often repeats the name of his inspiration to become a Republican and sees the faces of Aggies relatives. I wasn't really a Martin Luther King kind of person, says Fulton. As a teenager in the 80s, growing up in South Central Los Angeles, he was a consumer student of Malcolm X and a political junkie. Fulton was also active in the Young Democrats, but he grew unsettled by contradictions between what he read and what he saw among Democrats. Quote, I would just devour books and recordings of Malcolm X. Even to this day, I would still go back and look at some of his videos of his speeches and interviews. And it was about the Black community, taking care of the Black community and getting the government out of those communities. The Republican Party is about getting the government out of your business, and it kind of followed that line of thinking for me. Malcolm X also had a lot of stuff that he said about liberals, their policies, and how it hurts the Black community. I eventually began to look at liberals kind of suspiciously. By his early 30s, he was a registered Republican. Fulton and his fellow Black male Republicans remain in the minority, but they are no longer rarefied. Black women continue to consistently vote Democratic in the largest numbers of any group, but the percentage of Black men voting blue has slipped in every national election since 2012. Why has this growth persisted, given the rise of Donald Trump in the party? His takeover of the party over the past decade is the most prominent development in the GOP. In interviews with Black male Republicans, some overlook the long personal history of anti-Black racism that peppers Trump's background. Yes, he has arguably done more for white nationalists than any political figure in decades, but some Black male voters who have made the switch say subtle anti-Black racism lives just as large on the liberal side. Many cited a variety of other reasons for their GOP affinity. Most notable was the appeal of the GOP mythology as the party of tough, bootstrap independence. For others, it was disillusionment with Hillary Clinton and the era of former President Barack Obama. And some simply distrust the Democratic Party as a whole, doubting its intentions and viewing it as a haven of those who exist in the realm of self-pity. It was 10 years ago when many Democrats cheered an electoral milestone. On November 6, 2012, African Americans, the party's most loyal demographic, voted in numbers that were proportionately higher than whites for the first time ever, leading to the re-election of Barack Obama over Mitt Romney. In 2012, 66.2% of eligible Black voters made it to the polls compared to 64.1% of whites, according to what just happened?
You good, Mike? Keep going.
Now the screen just jumped on me. I don't know what just happened. Yeah, I'll just skip. Peeling away layers of that turnout reveals signs of Black partisan gender gap. While 96% of Black women voted for Obama in 2012, up from 92% in 2008, there was a drop in the number of young Black male voters who supported Obama. Overall, 87% of Black men voted to re-elect the first Black president in 2012, down from 95% in 2008. The number was even lower for Black men between the ages of 18 to 30, with 81% voting for Obama. Quote, okay, if I'm talking about 18 to 30-year-olds in 2012, then in 2006, 2008, some of the boys were getting out of college, says John Taylor, director of the Black Male Initiative in Atlanta, which focused heavily on turning out Black male voters. Quote, some of these folks were looking at a downturn economy. They were hoping for some really great stuff to come out of the Obama administration. And it was not an amazing kind of moment that they wanted. I mean, Obama was mostly an elected official, some part politician, really kind of like a savvy dude. He had to play his base, which he did. He wasn't the quote unquote Black president. He was the American president. So I think folks had unrealistic expectations for the first Obama presidency. The slight red word move among Black male voters held steady in 2016, but grew to 18% in 2020, while the number of Black women Trump supporters remain at 6%. It is too early for definitive numbers for the gender breakdown in midterms this year, but many exit polls indicate that the gender gap remained among Black voters in many races. For example, in Georgia, 94% of Black women voted for Stacey Abrams, while only 86% of Black men voted for her, according to AP Votecast. AP Votecast also found that 14% of all Black voters cast ballots for GOP congressional candidates, compared to an overall figure of 8% in 2018 and 2020. Black men are both Black and they are men, says Ben Jealous, outgoing president of the People for the American Way and former president of the NAACP. For many white working class men, the things that primarily matter are getting a good job, looking forward to a better job, having a strategy to make sure that the kids can work, or whether or not the kids go to college. The reality is there are a lot of Black men with the same primary concerns of what the fuck is going on? What just happened? The reality is there are a lot of Black men with the same primary concerns. Unfortunately, when you look at Donald Trump, he lies incessantly and successfully to those demographics. He says he cares about coal miners when really all he cares about is coal. Though through the lens of Jealous, those working class white men are victims of Republican manipulation. That conclusion is in common company with the classic conclusions of Thomas Frank's What's the Matter with Kansas? The perceptions of Jealous and Frank live among a flood of ideas, from the academic theorists to politics pundits, on how various groups of voters are deceived into falling into partisan lane that does not benefit their interests. But in partisan politics, it appears that gender, not race, is a larger factor in shaping the partisan lens of a growing number of Black men. They select the popular male choice for a party, the GOP over the popular race choice, the Democrats. From many Black male perspectives, the Democrat Party is perceived as weak, says Charles Sherry, president of 623 Management, an advertising and marketing firm that helps companies reach Black consumers and former publisher of Florida Courier and Daytona Times. And that's why you've got some brothers who appreciate Trump, even as bad as Trump has been. Why shouldn't some Black men want to identify with the notions of male strength, no matter how fallacious in choosing a party? Such a choice helps forge their own mental escapes from the wrath that comes from with being part of the demographic group, Black men, so heavily vilified in the popularized views of the American mindset. Moreover, when it comes to the perceptions of political parties.
Oh, you got some background noise.
Moreover, when it comes to perceptions of political parties, Republicans have stolen the reputational space of strength and masculinity, while Democrats own the existence as the party that is more sympathetic to those who need help and their nurturers. For James, a law student who asked to be referred to only to only buy a pseudonym out of fear that his political leanings could compromise his future legal career. Strength is more appealing, along with the GOP approaches aimed at inspiring Black enterprise and wealth building. James saw the red light as a teenager when he entered a prestigious boarding school as a star basketball player near the end of the Obama era. He discovered a world of views that challenged the diehard Democratic perspectives of his family and friends back home in Hollis, Queens. He decided his affinity for capitalism was more aligned with the Republican Party. He also became captivated by Donald Trump's style. However, on a trip home to Queens, he reunited with his friends on the basketball court in Hollis and shared his support for Donald Trump. His friends could not relate to that choice. Outrage flooded the court, as did James said, results in insults and accusations of self-hatred. See, we talk about this in the manosphere a lot. A lot of guys who have these talking points in the space, when they go out in public, you're going to be met with a lot of resistance.
Oh man, okay? An extreme amount.
Talking points work in the manosphere. They don't work outside. Don't work outside the manosphere. Ed Mudrow, chairman of the Gwinnett County Republican Party in Georgia, is not surprised to hear about James' experiences. He says he witnessed racism as a Black man in America, but it doesn't rise to the hatred he's encountered from other Blacks over his partisan choice. I've been called a racist apologist and all kinds of craziness, says Mudrow. I've often said Black Republicans need a support group. James says is facing less resistance to partisan choice among Blacks today than he did in high school. You can see with the numbers, more and more Black people are wanting a new approach to politics, I guess. We're feeling like we haven't gotten enough, like we've given the Democratic Party a lot, and then we feel like we don't get enough. A lot of Black people, especially young Black men, I would say, are kind of moving towards that direction. Okay.
Pathetic. Mike, like with this actual thing, they want to be concentrated on. So they think they're going to take hostages. They think they're just going to take the whole country hostage while they do all this stuff. I say forget these people. I say forget them. I say forget them. Let them go over there. Only talk about policy with those individuals. If they ain't got nothing policy proposal, drop them off panels immediately. Drop them off panels because the only thing that they like is they like to sit there and troll and gish gallop and all this kind of other stuff and Democrat Party this and Democrat Party that and LGBT this and LGBT that. None of this stuff's on the ballot. None of this stuff is happening anywhere. But that's the only party where you could get away with this type of stuff. I'm telling you, this stuff is going to end up being violent whenever these people start spouting this type of nonsense because they're trying to deliberately tell you that there's nothing wrong when there's something clearly wrong. It's disgusting to me because you don't see this stuff happening in Mississippi. You don't see groups of Black men talking about how well Mississippi is being run. But this stuff always seems to happen in these highly liberal ass areas or these liberal ass states where they get away with this nonsense. It completely ignoring American history, completely ignoring it. It's so infuriating hearing somebody, oh, well, yeah. As soon as you walk out of that bubble tent of your protected bigotry and biases and you're blind-eyed to it, you're introduced to it over and over again. And they're like, well, look at all the attention that I'm getting. I must be doing something. Like these dudes are attention deprived. And they think it by having a whole bunch of people concentrate on the stupid stuff that they say. They think that stuff's funny. It's not funny, man. You're ruining people's lives, actually denying people healthcare and services, man. It's ridiculous.
No, it gets pretty serious. I was in my gym. This was a couple of years ago, and I had a red hat on. And if you saw it from the side, you might have thought it was a MAGA hat. Now, my gym, it's there in Mount Vernon, and we got some mad soldiers in there, and we throwing up heavy ass weight, a lot of mad soldiers up in there, real, brothers who gonna clean your clock. If you were some joker talking that madness and in front of them, in the street, they gonna get you. So they walked up to me. Now I'm a big guy, one of the strongest guys up in there. But they were like, "Oh man, CB, what you got going on?" you got a MAGA hat on? These couple of cats rolled, about 2 or 3 dudes rolled around me. I was like, this ain't a MAGA hat. Take a look at the front of it. And it was kind of funny. We were laughing, but I was just thinking, if I was a MAGA dude up in there, one of these crazy cats walking, wearing that up in that gym, it would have been serious, man. It would have got serious. You know what I mean? You know, it would have got serious. And with these dudes, you know, I don't think I would have had the advantage. I'll just put it like that. So one of them, yeah, but 3 or 4 of them, nah, that wouldn't have been a good scene. So yeah, a lot of brothers in the street were not playing with you on that, you know, and especially guys like, well, you know, this guy was being supported by the Klan, and people were bringing up all the stuff where you saw the Klan and these guys were supporting them. You know, how could you be a part of that? So yeah, it brought about a lot of you know, the feelings ran high on that. The feelings did run high, and MOT does bring up a very good point when he talks about in these areas where, in these states especially, where people, you know, don't have, you know, proper health care and so forth because of heavily run Republican states. Somebody, I believe we've had a content creator who's had a relative who just passed, surprisingly, at a fairly young age, I would say. When I say fairly young, in their early 60s, who probably was living in one of those states, may not have had the ability to get maybe the kind of drugs that they could have purchased because of these positions against such things where you would put your life at risk. So, you know, it's difficult to, you know, it's difficult to say. You know, there's some real issues that are going on. So I understand why some people feel that way. I'm not going to walk up and beat anybody down for that, but yeah, you know. Anyway, go ahead, Mike.
Let me finish reading this article. Even some Democrats blame their party for the recent exodus of Black men. They say the party fails to sell its message in a way that motivate African-American men, charging that the party refuses to aggressively campaign to Black voters for fear of offending whites. This is the very tactic that helped plague the party's approach to African-American voters ever since the Republican success of Nixon and Reagan strategies to lure the silent white majority into the GOP fold. The Democratic Party is very much tortured by what they view as the prospects of what would happen if they were too explicit in saying what their policies have done for communities of color and Black people in particular, says Kevin Harris, Senior Vice President at Mosaic Communications and political consultant with People for the American Way. Quote, I think that is a strategic mistake, and I think we should be bold and aggressive and talk to everybody about what our policy has done and is intended to do for all people, and particularly working class people. A lot of those folks who Democrats are worrying about offending aren't going to go our way anyway. Don't say that to the DNC chair, Jamie Harrison. What the hell just happened? While campaigning, I don't know what's going on here. While campaigning for the U.S. Senate candidate Mandela Barnes in Wisconsin a few days before the election, he fumed at the suggestion that the party was afraid to appeal to its most loyal base of voters. It's hogwash. I don't know who they are talking about in the Democratic Party, he told Rolling Stone. As chair of the party, who is a Black man, I am not afraid of talking about issues impacting the Black community. We understand the backbone is in the African-American community. In Camden, New Jersey, you could not escape political discussions at the dinner table of the Williams family. Dwayne Williams, a former school board member and a devout Republican, while his wife, Terry, is a loyal Democrat. And we've stayed married for 36 years, says Williams. In many ways, the family perfectly illustrates the Black partisan gender gap. They have 3 adult children, 2 girls and 1 boy, who are now in their 20s. The parents say they let their children decide on their own partisan direction. In 2020, the 2 daughters voted for Biden, while the son voted for Trump. More Black men are clearly seeing what I'm seeing, says Williams. I see the Republican Party as symbolically making the statement, you have to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Everybody has boots. The idea of Republican bootstraps versus Democratic handouts is steep in partisan stereotypes, along with the notion that Republicans are stronger on the economy. Democrats say both are misguided, yet promoting healthy dosages of independence, bootstrapping, and self-sufficiency is the driving force that led the Williams men and many others to vote Republican, coupled with a disappointment in the conditions in African-American communities that are represented in city councils, state legislators, and Congress by liberal Democrats who fail to deliver. Quote, we're voting for the same people, says Fulton, even though the policies that they have are clearly not working. The communities are not getting better. They are not getting healthier. Such an argument sends many Black Democrats screaming in horror. You can't say that it makes sense to become a Republican at a time when you've got Republicans that are literally trying to take your vote away with surgical precision, says Cliff Albright, co-founder and executive director of the Black Voters Matter Fund. You have Republicans that are literally suing against the student debt cancellation, saying they are doing it because Black people would benefit disproportionately. Trying to take away affirmative action, attacking teaching our history in our schools. You can go policy by policy, and there is no policy that Republicans support that actually benefits our community. So to say, hey, we need to look at the other side, or hey, both sides are racist, that's ignorant. But I'm not going to say that because Biden or Democratic Congress is not meeting everything that I want to see. Therefore, I'm going to go to the other side that are literally anti-Black. That's self-hatred, right? And so none of those arguments make sense.
So let me get this right.
There was a time when Reginald Grant, 33, at Houston. Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so let me get this right. You don't pay attention to politics. The community is not getting better. So rather than vote with the actual people who's actually trying to help you, you vote against the people who vote against everything to not help you. In order for you to get things better in your community, the things you want to fight for are inherently liberal. So to get inherently liberal outcomes, you're going to vote with the conservative party. Please help me make this make sense. This is why this stuff, it doesn't make sense. And I think these people are doing it for attention. And they'd rather destroy everything with no responsibility to anyone than to take responsibility and just vote with the actual people and learn the history. I say this, don't even worry about these people. If they want to be over there, leave their ass out there. Don't even bother talking to them about anything. I don't care if the number come to 40%. Leave their ass out there because it's not going to go beyond 10 or 15%. But at the end of the day, it's not going to bring you to the table to talk to Tariq Nasheed, Jason Black, what's the guy in Houston? Phil the Advice Show. You're never going to talk to these people. Yeah, Phil Scott. It's like all this actual trolling and standing in the middle, it's going to end up in violence someday because you're going to be affecting people in actual states and you're going to have to take responsibility for it. I mean, we don't have time to be playing these type of games with these people. It's so easy to participate. You have to do all of this stuff to not participate and take a side. It's crazy.
Well, I think the part that's crazy too.
Let me finish reading this. Let me just finish reading this real quick. There was a time when Reginald Grant, 33, a Houston geography teacher and former Marine who completed one tour in Kuwait and one in Afghanistan, embraced the idea that his values were more at home with the GOP. His middle-class upbringing was steeped in self-reliance and allergic to the idea that racism could impair him. In his view, it was his own tenacity, not any kind of fate as a member of a racial group tortured by discrimination, that would determine his destiny. It was a mindset that led him at 130 pounds to make it in the Marines at age 18. After 4 years in the military, he enrolled in Texas Southern University, a historically Black college where he found himself in the minority as a Republican. His was the voice that challenged liberal professors, and he helped reestablish the campus chapter of College Republicans. And those professors that didn't agree with you, they welcomed a challenge. It wasn't like you had to tiptoe around. However, he did take his first detour from the GOP in 2008 when he was captivated by Barack Obama. He looked like a rebel, Grant says. An outsider like me, yet Grant would become one of those Obama-Romney voters, becoming disappointed in Obama's support for GAY marriage and excess government spending patterns that Grant found wasteful. By 2016, he found himself in Cleveland, Ohio, as a delegate cheering at the Republican convention that coronated the Trump-Pence ticket. 2 years later, he ran a losing campaign in a GOP primary for a seat in the state legislature. I'll be honest, when I was trying to get support within the Black community for the Republican Party, I would use that same line. It's a Republican Party who pushed for abolition of slavery. Lincoln was the Republican president. He abolished slavery. That's who we are. We are for liberation of all people. Quote, I was just doing the politician thing and knew I was being a little fast and loose with those facts. However, my intentions about what I wanted to do for the community were pure, even though I was being a bit misleading. But even at a point, if you keep telling the same, I call them lies or misinformation, however you want to put it, over time, you start to believe some of the things that you are saying, and you end up getting lost a little bit in those lies if you keep telling them over and over again. Sounds like the manosphere. Sounds like the manosphere. In 2018, you would often find him with a close-cut military haircut and his cowboy hat, traveling through Houston in his pickup truck. Yet he started to question some of his conservatism on social views, which experienced an upheaval when one of his best buddies from his days as a Marine came out as GAY, which forced him to view that issue differently. He now supports GAY marriage, living through Trumpism gradually changed him in other ways, from Trump's referral to Colin Kaepernick as a son of a bitch, to hearing fellow Republicans denounce Black Lives Matter movement, to hearing party faithful celebrate blue lives in the era of George Floyd, to those GOP school board members throughout Texas who criticize critical race theory without any kind of intelligent understanding of Black history. So many of them are a bunch of ignorant racist people, says Grant. I know them. I've been in the room with them. I know their line of thinking. You don't say. By 2020, Grant was sporting shoulder-length dreadlocks and arrived at a space where he could no longer stomach being a Republican. Regardless of how many bootstrap party members claim to command, he voted for Joe Biden in 2020. There it is. There it is.
So you go.
You can only fake the funk for so long before it. Yeah, go ahead, Renaissance.
No, I was gonna say you go from the, I guess you go from the crew cut or the fade to dreads, and kind of the opposite. Obama became president. Allen Iverson cut off his dreads, cut off his braids. This guy became a Democrat and grew him out. But nah, it's everything. I think it's a great example of, like you said, you start to believe the lies. You hear the rhetoric repeated, and then you kind of get a wake up call in some form of fashion, and some choose to sort of snap out of it and come back to reality, and some choose to continue down the path. But the thing that I always find interesting in all this is they keep going back to this idea of self-reliance and, not depending on government. I'm like, what does that have to do with, like, I'm curious if, like, hard work and personal responsibility have to do with, like, who you vote for and things like that. I mean, it doesn't add up. It's just sort of rhetoric, and it's sort of an excuse to not deal with policy. And then on top of that, I never get this idea of, okay, Democrats aren't doing enough, so we go and become Republicans. Like, you don't see any other group say, you didn't see the Tea Party say, okay, we're going to become Democrats because we're disillusioned with Republicans. They're not doing enough. Like, it's somehow only, this group of people that wants to act like, well, I don't like what I'm getting from Democrats. So instead of, like, going engaging with someone, trying to put someone else in office in the party, trying to shift the party's position on something, their idea is just, okay, well, I was voting for A wasn't working, so I'm going to go vote for B. And then when you listen to these people and talk to them, they'll say that, they're logical thinkers, they're critical thinkers. And it's just like, none of this is adding up here. And to MOT's point, when you look at the last person once again, last two, here you have someone in one of these blue areas or blue states who's espousing this ideology. And it's just like, soon as you get in the room and actually have to deal with what these people were actually talking about, all of a sudden you realize, this is kind of misinformation. It's not what I thought it was.
Yeah. Let me finish this last piece up. At 23, Savant Myrick was the first Black and youngest mayor ever elected in Ithaca, New York. In the middle of his fourth term, his frustration with the rise of Donald Trump led him to leave that job and join People for the American Way, where he has overseen the organization's effort to increase turnout among Black male voters in 25 states. He would applaud the exit of a man like Grant from the GOP, yet he fears this potential moment of redefinition in which the GOP that threatens to dethrone the standing of Donald Trump and elevate Florida Governor Ron DeSantis could lead more Black men to ride the elephant. Quote, DeSantis, racist appeals are better coded than Trump's. That is to say, his dog whistle is more finely tuned, says Myrick. DeSantis also doesn't have the same stigma that now comes with Trump. With Trump, there's an accumulated taboo in the Black community against supporting him that hasn't been developed for somebody like DeSantis. This is true.
Well,
Myrick, who is now incoming president. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say the one thing I point out with this is, this article is from December 2022. So, I think the one thing is DeSantis has pretty much shown, his anti-Blackness lately with, the banning of African-American studies, banning of Black fraternities and
DEI programs.
Yeah, DEI as well, too. So I don't know if his dog whistle is as refined as it once was.
Seems more like a megaphone. Myrick, who is now incoming president of the People of the American Way, also says Trump's appeal is finally dying. Part of Trump's appeal to Black men and to everybody that he actually does appeal to has been that he is supposedly a winner, says Myrick. You may not like the things he says, but at least he wins. Well, it's been 3 straight election cycles in which he's been a pretty big loser for 18, 20, and 2022. And so I don't know if he'll be able to successfully spin that narrative anymore, that he is a winner and therefore you should follow him. I think that a DeSantis would peel off more Black men in 2024 than Trump would, and he doesn't have the same stink of losing on him. Many liberal and Democratic grassroots activists are more shaken by the persistent Black gender gap in turnout than the dips in Black male support for Democratic candidates. However, in all racial groups, women have higher turnout rates, according to the Center for American Women in Politics. For example, in 2020, 66% of all eligible Black women voters cast ballots compared to 55% of Black men. Among whites, 69% of women voted compared to 67% of men. And among Hispanics, 56% of women compared to 51% of men voted. The totals for turnout in this year's midterms are not yet as comprehensive. Overall, African-American, let MOT in. Overall, African-American turnout may have been lower in the midterms this year than in 2018, according to the early calculations of many cities. For example, Black turnout fell 12% below the 2018 levels in Milwaukee. That leads to speculation about the impact of that decline on the losing campaign of Democrat Mandela Barnes. He lost to incumbent Ron Johnson, an election-denying Republican, by 1 percentage point. It is a loss that serves as a microcosmic lesson to Democrats across the country about the danger of losing more Black men to the GOP and the importance of turning out its loyal bases. So I really don't disagree with this article at all. I think it's actually pretty fantastic. I'll drop it in the chat because I think that folks who want to make these arguments that, there's something good on the other side, the onus is on you to prove that. I'm not telling you how to vote. I'm just saying back it up with some substance. Because I have yet to see any Republican city controlled by Republicans winning.
Or actually that serve black men better.
Go ahead, Emily.
Like where's all these conservative areas that is doing so well for black men? Can you name them? Can you name them? Per capita, money being made in these areas. Can you name them? I mean, this is why I say, don't even bother with black men. Look, listen, all this woe is me, they never concentrate on us. Fuck you, get your money together. Get your money together and actually participate in the process. Don't tell me all this stupid shit about you don't get shit and you live in a liberal area. Move to a conservative area. Those are all the things that you're missing. And you don't want to live in conservative areas for a reason. Like, we can't keep going over this with these politically ignorant ass fucking dudes, man. I think it's crazy. I think it's crazy that we even need to have this conversation at this point with these people. Go over there. You want to throw your vote away? You don't want to get anything? You want to hope much attention paid to yourself? You think this is a long-term path to actually get there? You got to prove all this. You got to prove it with the history, but they protect themselves from the actual history by not learning it on purpose. I don't know what to say or do with these people, man. I just don't know.
And the thing here is, they think Republicans are against immigration, whether it's amnesty or not. We've proven this before. Ronald Reagan is the godfather of amnesty in the last 40 years. So this idea that
party without him.
Republicans
would be a modern Republican Party without.
Yeah. Yeah, the idea that Republicans and conservatives are against porous borders, in fact, they brought a lot of those Latinos in, especially in Florida, okay? You think those Cubanos who are coming from Cuba and coming from Nicaragua and these other places in Colombia, you think that they're coming here with boatloads of money? Not hardly, okay? These people are getting a lot of welfare. They're getting a lot of assistance through the Republican Party, okay? What they have done is they've tried to shame Black people for being on welfare while they put Latinos on welfare, okay?
Yeah.
This whole, Newt Gingrich talking about Obama being the food stamp president while they, behind Obama's back, were propping up a whole lot of Latinos with a lot of welfare and a lot of assistance that they stripped away from Black people and gave away to Latinos. So don't pretend like this didn't happen, because you can look at all the demographics and it proves that. Okay.
Yeah, but another thing is
not telling you how to vote, just telling you the perspective. Right.
It's just that, how come these arguments wasn't having in the 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s? Why is it just now we need to talk about this ahistorical type of situation? The problem is these weak men who actually seen something in Trump that they would never be able to exercise in life is what this is about. Because if Mitt Romney were the actual candidate, we wouldn't be having this kind of conversation. If Ron Johnson was the actual candidate, we wouldn't be having this conversation. It's because they like the way this dude perceptibly worked with actual women. That's what they're on, man. And I don't want to be around these sick individuals. You would know what's going on within this country, or we're not even going to deal with you. That's the way a lot of these organizations are working. You try to walk in with that Gish Gallup troll, historically neutral stuff, they're going to take your microphone, they're going to turn it off, give it to somebody else. If you don't know where you live at and why you live there, you don't understand the political history and why you're there, there's no need to talk to you. That's why they're getting everybody else out to vote and not talking to you specifically. But you don't want to follow directions. You want all this focus on you. That's never going to happen. It's easier to politically participate when you got your stuff together and know the history. That's also part of being a citizen of this country, is knowing the actual history. Fine, why don't you move to the Mississippi Delta and tell me how many Republicans you see? Where's a Republican candidate? There won't be a Republican candidate. It's not possible to be a Republican candidate down there, especially a Black Republican candidate with the history of that actual place. So they gotta stop playing games with us, man. This ain't no game to be playing with.
Yeah. Renaissance man?
Yeah, no, someone was saying why.
He's gone.
Well, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I
Wait,
can hear you now.
okay. No. Now I was gonna say, no, you were saying it has these arguments, why these things were made before. Actually, these arguments have been made before. Like if you go back and listen to, 70s, 80s, even 90s, you'll hear that same critique. These talking points are not new. Whether it be people talking about, oh, the Democrats take the black community for granted, or we've been voting Democrat, nothing's been changing. This is the same dog and pony show you've seen for years. It's just new every 4 years you have a new group of people who come of age, who can now vote, and you have demographics of people who hadn't previously participated or paid any attention to politics who do show for that cycle. So that's why it always sounds new to some people, but it hasn't. And the other thing is too that when these people make the arguments that these communities haven't gotten better, that's fundamentally false. I mean, when you look at New York City, some of these other schools in the 80s, 70s, crack era, these places were definitely were definitely not ideal and definitely outright dangerous. A lot of people got shot, killed, a lot of people went to jail. So I mean, while I'm not saying neighborhoods are by any stretch of the means perfect, like to sit here and pretend like it's just the same and nothing has changed in these communities, it's fundamentally not true. I mean, if you're a millennial or a Gen Zer, go talk to a Gen Xer who grew up, during the crack era in Baltimore or something like that, and then ask them what it is like relative to what it is now. I mean, they've had shows like The Wire and other shows that have been based on what these communities look like back then. So like I said, things aren't perfect, but to sit up here and act like it's just the same is ignoring history. And then to sit up here and just say that, oh, well, because a Democrat was in office and we didn't get exactly what we wanted, that's just because the person was a Democrat. Like the candidate could have just been someone, who was not a good candidate. You have Democrats who just aren't good candidates. You saw that in elections. Or it could be that, this person was incompetent. Or it could be, hey, the other party was against them in anything they tried to do and basically tied their hands like they did with Obama. So, these proclamations that are made of, oh, well, we just vote for Democrats and nothing happened. It just happens. It ignores a lot of nuance and a lot of policy and a lot of facts.
Nicole?
Mike, I'm just going to more or less kind of say everything that these two brothers here have said previously. I don't really have a lot more to add. I think this has been broken down quite well. I just don't have really much else to say. I think at bottom line, we're gonna have to really be fully engaged, and that's just not where we are at this stage. And what these other brothers were talking about, I totally agree with, and I don't know what else. That's all I'll say on this for now.
No, it's just that engaging with Dr. Thunder, LAR, Ike, I really enjoyed those kind of conversations, because I think it's necessary to have those conversations when you have Black folks who believe that there's a anti-Asian Asian hate crime bill that was passed, but really have not read the material at all. And and so when I say, political illiteracy is a factor with Black men, that's the illiteracy that we're talking about here. One, they know something had happened because they heard it from somebody. And two, they did not read the material themselves. And three, there's no verification of information. Okay, a lot of misinformation being put out here, a lot of disinformation coming from coming from the other party, but they don't actually take into consideration, some of the issues that's happening. I think that to Renaissance's point about, these quote unquote Black ghettos and things like that, those things are, went away in the 80s and the 90s. That's not what's really happening right now. You very rarely will go to a Democrat-run city and see this hellhole, Book of Eli, guys hanging under bridges with chainsaws and tire irons, revving it up, waiting to rob you or something like that. That doesn't really happen like that anymore. Most Democrat-run cities are pretty cleaned up. You see the bike lanes out there. You see the investment going in. We can look at the numbers. We see, the numbers financially, economically are doing very well, much better than Republican-run states and Republican-run cities. So to say that, they're not seeing the benefit where, in their communities, in regards to, progress, I have to call cap.
No, it's just like even things like if you look at the 80s, you had I don't even know if they have anymore, like high-rise housing projects. Those things are gone, man. They tore those things down, like Pruitt-Igoe in Chicago. I can't remember what the ones were called in Atlanta. They tore those down.
Green.
No, that was in Chicago as well. I can't remember what the one in Atlanta was called. But like they've torn those things down. Like that was a big, like if you go back and look at crime in the 80s, like that's what you're bound to see is hey, all these housing projects that basically like were havens for crime and drug open air.
Tore them down in Mississippi. He tore the majority of them down in Mississippi.
Yeah, open air drug markets, like those things are gone. You see a rise, guys talking about, Section 8 now, that's where you've either seen that or you've seen them build them in more like mixed use type of areas, mixed income. So like, this whole idea of it's almost like that Fox News talking point of when they talk about somewhere like Chicago or other cities. They're really relying on people not really knowing what's going on the ground in any of these places, not really going to any of these places and just seeing like a soundbite and thinking, oh yeah, things are horrible. But it's like I said, if you just go back and look historically at what things were, you're like, wow, it's nothing like it used to. I mean, the Golden knows what like New York City was, back in the 70s and 80s and what it's like now. It's completely different.
That's very accurate.
I mean, but the point is that like a talking point, however false, it's ahistorical. It's like to them, they get off of being politically illiterate and have us chase them around to try to educate them on something. I just, it's just too much to do.
Yeah, it's just that it's good that we have these conversations because I don't see it really happening anywhere else in this space. Debunking a lot of the myths and propaganda that's out there. I think that's really important part on our side. What's going on, Citizen Lou? What it do?
Hey, what's up, Mike? What's up, MOT? What's up, Renaissance, man? Salute to the chat.
What's up, Citizen Lou?
What's going on, bro?
What's going on, man? Nothing, man. I'm over here in DC. I saw y'all live. I wanted to hop on real quick. I wanted to give y'all some more, some more things that they're saying. I posted in the chat, right? So now they're saying, that whole illegal immigrants are running into black neighborhoods. I'm like, running us out of black communities. And I guess they keep using that Chicago, that whole situation going. Yeah, exactly. The whole Chicago point that, the dude went up there and was, acting all crazy, talking about, oh, y'all ain't never did nothing for us. So now they're running with that. So, but in reality, though, it's not really true. I mean, they're not running into people's communities, and it's like I think I heard y'all say earlier, why ain't they mad at Governor Abbott? I mean, isn't this interstate terrorism? Him sending these migrants all across America, is that not interstate terrorism or interstate warfare?
Human trafficking at best.
Yeah, human trafficking, right?
Human trafficking at best.
Yeah, like so. It's just crazy, and they think it's funny. They like, oh yeah, well, y'all are sanctuary cities, so y'all should help out. It's like, dude, it's not what it means. But okay, man, it's just trolling. It's just Republican trolling. That's all they do. That is troll. until you get enough of them, really. Like, but yeah, I was just jumping on that. I put the thing. If y'all want to, it's just misinformation. Just like y'all said, a lot of. I'm not going to engage with the dude. I just want to show y'all an example of black men saying these same talking points, and it's like there's no, outside that Chicago video, we have no proof of that.
Yeah, I like what this guy said at the end of his
No,
tweet.
yeah.
Don't expect us to stay silent or be friendly with you. I think MOT made this point. Like that's fine. You can vote for who you vote for, but like, dude, don't sit up here and act like you can just do something that everyone knows is and vote for a party that is outright hostile to your community, and then just be like, oh well, why aren't people, receiving me, or why am I receiving all this hatred? It's like, where do you think you can go and outright vote against the interest of that group and then think you're going to be welcomed, like, and have like a warm reception with that group? Like, it just makes no sense.
Hey, this is what I say. It's nobody's fault but your own. You invested all this ignorance in the conservative movement that you can't prove. This is your own fault. Don't try to make us do time for things that it's your fault that you don't want to pick up a book and read. We know you guys live in liberal areas. We know you guys live in liberal areas where things work. And then you pull all this nonsense about, oh, well, what are Republicans going to do? I'm like, man, look, y'all want to do that stuff? Fine. Y'all don't want to do all that stuff? Even also fine. What we going to do, we're going to get everybody else out the vote but you. We're going to go to all these naturalized citizens and everybody else and get them out the vote and not you. Because you don't want to do the bare minimum as an actual citizen of the country to which you actually live in. So what we going to do, we're just going to do business without you. No, man, you don't allow these people to take no hostages. You allow those people to live in those liberal areas. You do those things for those people in that area. And just like in Denver, free busing, free school, free everything. You know what these people did? Stop showing up in large margins. So it's like, okay, not getting any representation is what you want. All right, man, go to the conservative side. Stop talking to them. Just get everybody else out to vote but them. That's what I'm on right now. So.
No, you're right on that.
Yeah.
No, you're right on
Yeah.
because go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
No, I Real Tim Black is actually on YouTube. He's actually a content creator himself. And so I'm pretty familiar with his politics as well. And so, what they're arguing against, man, is this culture, in that tweet. It's this culture. It's just a culture warrior talking point, and it's their way of being disruptive to the conversation, but they don't actually have anything to actually add. And this is kind of what I was trying to get LAR to understand on the panel, that you have a mass base of Black men involved in a political, or who are not involved in a political process due to political illiteracy. There are a lot of guys who just don't know what they're talking about. They have no idea what's on the ballot. They have no idea who's on the ballot. They have no idea where they're supposed to go vote, where the voting booth is. They don't even know if you can mail in the ballot. They don't even understand all of this. That's a huge issue, but they have a lot to say about some stuff they don't understand. Go ahead, Lou. We'll finish up with you.
All right, well, I'll go then. It's like this. You have a computer in your pocket where you can look these things up by zip code. There's really no excuse of having greater access to actual technology, but no understanding of how things work. This is the them problem. So what you do is you just lock them all the way out. You know they're not going to vote. You know they're not going to show up. Just go out with other people. Be part of society and let these people sit back and think that they're actually taking hostage. Problem solved. Don't even concentrate on them. Don't even address them, because to them, they think it's humiliating you to your face that that they don't care about society and that you do. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna make sure stuff don't work just to make you mad. I'm like, all right, man, no problem. Two can play that game. We're just not gonna actually concentrate on anything you're talking about. Once you start talking, we just leave the conversation, just log off, log out, and just get away from it. Period. Problem solved. You make them change. We've been changing toward them for the entire time. It's time for us to stop doing it.
Yeah, my bad. I'm back. Yeah, shout out to him. Yeah, you're right on that. Yeah. Hey, I took one of your sound bites one time in Moti. I told him I was talking to some people. They was like, "How you feel about Joe Biden saying if you ain't black, if you don't vote for him, you ain't black?" What you told him? He said that he was right, nigga. If you vote Republican, you a traitor. That was funny as hell. I told somebody that was hilarious. But yeah, man, y'all keep doing y'all thing, man. I missed a good chunk of the streams. I'm gonna go ahead and listen to that. You said you were on this panel, LAR, Mike. What stream was that on? Y'all were talking.
Ike Ogermain, case closed. They do it
Case
every
closed.
Sunday, I think, 4 p.m. Eastern.
Okay, cool. I'm tap into that. Okay, cool. All right, man. Y'all have a good one. Oh, y'all
All right,
shoot
cool.
y'all.
All right.
Yeah, no, I was gonna quickly say before we close out. Nah, people want to go back to these those little bumper sticker type of issues. Oh, Joe Biden said you ain't black if you don't vote for me. Oh, I'm offended. It's like, dude, yeah, you may not like the soundbite, but what he was saying was pretty simple. Like, dude, if you can't see the difference between my policies and Donald Trump's policies, especially when that shit has been in your face for the past 4 years, like how are you going to sit up here and say that you have some allegiance to Black America, when you see what this guy is doing and what he's gotten away with? It kind of goes back to the same thing we talked about on the previous stream about that whole DNC meeting with Biden and like Cedric Richmond, and people are like, oh well, he told Democrats, told Black Democrats that they're gonna have to cut deals with Hispanics. Well, yeah, because Hispanics is one of the fastest growing demographic in the country. So like, yeah, if you have a demographic that's growing and you have the white population that's shrinking, then yeah, you're gonna have to, instead of necessarily cutting alliances with just white liberals or white Democrats, you're gonna have to cut deals with them as well too if you want to get things done like these guys claim. So it all seems to go back to either things like that, really no evidence or policy based sort of discussion at all. And honestly, I think some of these guys as well, I think there's an element of almost resentment, in the sense of, for whatever reason, they may feel that, they're being left behind. Because, when you listen to them talk about, oh, nothing has changed, well, it's like, when we start looking at data and history, things have definitely changed. So, it sort of leads me to think like, these guys kind of alluding to their personal lives where they feel like, maybe something has not changed. And, it kind of makes me think they're almost like some of these white Republicans who see like the prosperity and things going, and then now they're just kind of voting out of anger, resentment, and spite because of their personal situation. That's all I got.
Nicole, you have any? Oh, he said he think he said he's
No.
done.
I'm saying I have to agree with Renaissance from that standpoint. There's a lot of disaffection. You're seeing a lot of that. You're seeing a lot of guys who really, want to actually get close to that, to the power and that masculinity. I guess that piece that they're really running, that these white guys have, they don't have it. But if they're proximal to it, if they're close to these white guys, they can get a piece of that themselves, or they feel like they can grab that, or that'll increase their masculinity piece and so forth. And listen, I get some of that mindset, but at the same time, you are looking at a group of folks who don't have your interests really at heart. So what does that mean? They're really not trying to, i.e., share power with you, bring you closer to the power nexus, get you deeper involved and increase your masculinity over there, because they're looking at you as a competitor. So to a large extent, you have to kind of understand that dynamic as well. And I have questions whether or not these guys have some of that question, or maybe they don't care. Maybe they just want to be close to it, or for whatever reason. But it's still somewhat of a flawed strategy, because at the end of the day, you're going to have to, nobody gives up power, and nobody's going to give you power just to try to power share with you, unless you really are effective politically, really, and economically, if you will. You're going to have to really, compete. You're going to have to be involved in this process. Can't be ignorant about it. You can't be sleeping on this. And if you want to do that, you're going to have to be organized. You really are going to have to be organized and get involved very much. And that's what I believe. These guys, they want to have that proximity, but they don't want to put the work in to do that. They don't want to, they want to be given that, and they don't want to necessarily really have to work for that. They'll cash out, say it's better for me to lay back and do nothing than to get involved, and somehow they think that that's going to help them, which is absolutely ridiculous. But that's where we are with this. That's where we are with a lot of this right now.
All right. Thank you all for joining us. Please hit the like button on the way out and hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust.